Hey everybody. So let me tell you the story of what happened to me back when I was 16 when I got my first job. So I got this job when I was 16 after dropping out of school because, I just wanted to earn money and, just take care of myself. I absolutely hated school, I was bullied and stuff, and so, I left, dropped out and got this job and I was really, really excited. Anyway, things were good for the first couple of weeks, but I had this manager. We'll call him Jimmy. Now let's just say Jimmy was the friendly kind of type, yeah? I think you know where I'm going with that. Creep vibes. So back then when I was 16, I was already going through a lot at home and everything. So I was settling in really well. But then there was Jimmy, always leering, always making inappropriate comments towards me. And me being me, I ignored it. This was my first proper job and everything. But I absolutely hated it when he was on shift. I'll give you an example of some of the comments he'd say, like, say if it was cold, right? He would come up to me, he would look straight down at my chest and go, ooh, bit nippy, are we? That grin that them creeps have, ooh, just makes you want to vom, doesn't it? And he proper made me want to vom a lot. Like, it was just, the vibes was just horrible. Now, there was one particular day I had to go to the stock room because where I worked, obviously, I was in charge of a couple of the aisles and that, so I had to go up in the stock room, obviously do my notes, get all my boxes and everything to bring down to the conveyor belt and, lower down because we didn't have lifts then. We had to have we had a conveyor belt, basically. We had to put all the stuff down on it. So anyway, I was in there on my own and guess who approaches me? With no warning at all, it actually made me jump. Yep, you guessed it. Jimmy the creep. And then he gives it, oh, so this is where you've been hiding then? And I was like, not hiding, just doing my job, innit? And then he went into proper full creep mode, like, yes you are. Now, only being 16, I'm feeling really uneasy now, like my heart's racing and everything. I can feel that cold feeling wash over me, do you know what I mean? So me brushing it off, trying to ignore it, I say to him, is there anything you needed me for? To which he replied, oh yeah, there's plenty I need. So then he's approaching me, he's getting closer and closer to me, right? And I've just dashed to the side, just out the way. Picked up my last box just to put on the conveyor belt and then pressed it, obviously to go down. When all of a sudden, I feel this hand on my ass. Now, I had kept quiet for so long, right? And back then at that age, when I'm scared, or feel I'm under threat in any way, I'll fight. So my reaction was I turned round and I gave him a swift right hook, right in the nose. He'd gone backwards because he'd lost his footing, falling over a box. And his nose started bleeding. I noticed on my hand there was a little bit of blood on my old knuckle, yeah? He was laying there holding his nose, looking at me with pure shock in his eyes, right? Because men like him think you're a naive, silly little girl that won't do nothing. Like I would just take it. But little did he know, this weren't my first rodeo with a predatory man. One thing is saying stuff, but to touch me without my consent, that's a different story. Anyway, after I punched him, I did stand there and I was frozen. And as he was getting up, scrambled to his feet, he looked at me and he went, you bitch, you spiteful bitch, you hit me. And I remember standing there, adrenaline pumping, and I said, you touch me again, next time I'll break your teeth. To which he said with a snarl on his face, you won't get a chance. With that, I brushed past him, went back downstairs to the showroom, got on with my day. And he stayed in his office all day. I remember stacking them shelves, feeling completely numb and thinking to myself, I'm in so much trouble now. I'm in so much trouble. Anyway, fast forward to a week later. I was on shift, doing my thing, and then I noticed our area manager had come down. And he'd asked to see me for a meeting. And here's me thinking, oh shit, that's it. I'm going to be fired for what I'd done. So I went in the meeting and I was prepared to tell the truth about what happened. But the area manager weren't there to see me about this incident with Jimmy the creep. I was presented with something completely different. So, from an anonymous customer. Now, this anonymous customer had filed a complaint about me, quoting, using foul language on the shop floor. And get this, it was dated on a day I weren't even in. But back then in the early 2000s and that, it meant nothing to a job's worth. There was this one girl that I worked with, right, and I got on really well with her. We'll call her Sally. Now, Sally was sitting in on this meeting, and she looked very, very confused. As I said, we got on really, really well, and she was a nice girl. But anyway, as I was saying, she looked confused and said to the area manager, "Mate, why am I even here?" The AM turned round and said, "Well, you're here because you signed this statement. You bared witness to this to confirm that these accusations were true." To which she looked horrified and she was like, hang on a second. She goes, "Jimmy gave me something to sign earlier." She goes, "I thought it was for stock." She goes, "But..." And she looked over at him. She goes, "You made me sign this." She goes, "I didn't even read it. You didn't allow me to." So I'm sitting there and I looked straight at him and I was just like, oh wow. Bless her heart though, she was saying, "I didn't see anything like that from Charlene." She goes, "And I swear to God she weren't in that day." To which Jimmy and the AM turned around and said, "Well, Sally, you've signed this statement which confirms that it was true." And then the AM turns to me, goes, "To which, Charlene, I'm going to have to let you go." Now, I was 16 years old, so there'd be no point in me saying anything. No one listens to 16-year-olds back then, even though I knew this story was fabricated by Jimmy the creep, just because his ego's in tatters. And plus he's a predator. The AM was not going to listen to me, so with that, I held my head high. I got up from that desk. And as I got up and I was walking out, I remember saying this to Jimmy: "Once a creep, always a creep. Truth will come out one day." Sod working round a perv. I went home feeling really, really deflated that day. It was the worst thing that could have happened to me. But karma had my back. No matter what happens, karma always has your back, even if it is years and years later, like in my case. Many years later, I bumped into Sally in town, and we spoke about what had happened that day. And she gave it, she goes, "You don't know what happened, do you?" I'm like, "No, why, what happened?" She was like, "You don't know what happened with Jimmy the creep?" I was like, "Girl, spill the tea, what happened with him?" Apparently, Jimmy the creep had got the sack because he was being investigated for having explicit images on his computer of people underage. He also had a girlfriend that was underage, and the parents had reported him. And he was given a SAR, S-A-R. Now, as I said, this wasn't my first rodeo when it came to a creepy man, and it certainly wasn't my last either over the years. But I took comfort in knowing that karma really had my back. The truth always comes out, and I do not regret busting his nose either. So the moral to this story is, a lie can travel around the world while the truth is getting its boots on. Karma never forgets. Now I'm in a good place now, and I'm living my dream, my dream job that I always wanted to do. So I know I'm in a far better place than what he is. So girls, if you've ever gone through anything like this, just trust in the knowledge that karma will always have your back. Anyway, that's my story of when I was 16 and when I was wrongfully sacked from my first job.